Hi, welcome back to another lesson. Today I'm going to give you three simple tips that will help your chord playing immensely. Now, I'm not talking about the sort of stay on your fingertips advice, which is basic and let's face it, it's good advice. If you think about the physiology of your finger, you've got a bone running through it. So when you can apply a lot more pressure in line with that bone than you can kind of pressing that way. Getting up on your fingertips will allow you to press down on the strings much more easily. You'll exert a lot more pressure. You'll also stay out of the way of your other fingers and the other strings as well, so your playing will be cleaner. That's not the tip I'm talking about. In fact, that's kind of just good advice. It's not really a tip. Everyone should know about that. What I'm talking about are just a few things that are helping your chords sound as good as they can be. Right now, the first one is muting the low strings. There are a lot of chords, especially cowboy chords and open chords, where you don't need to strum the E string, the sixth string, or the A string even. How do you keep those strings out of your chord? A couple of ways. One is just to be very accurate with your pick or your finger. Again, that's not a great tip, that's just advice. It's not really helpful to say just be more accurate, so that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is we're reaching over the top of our neck with our thumb to touch this bottom E string. Some people can even touch the A string as well to help you mute those strings out of chords where you don't want them. Play a C chord, let that finger come over the top and touch that E string. Then you can strum all the strings here and still not hear that bottom E string, which you don't want in the C chord. The other way you can do it is fingers or pick, really, but especially when you're playing with your fingers, is to let this thumb rest on the top string as you strum, or the bottom two strings if you like. Top strings, two strings. I call these the bottom strings because they are the lowest in pitch. So just to clear that up, the bottom two strings, you can let your thumb touch those in your chord. That will help keep them out of the equation and make your chords sound much more clear. Next tip I've got for you is kind of a two-folder. It's think ahead. Now this may sound very straightforward, but if you are playing a succession of chords or a progression of chords, you want to know what chord you're going to way before you get there. So you can kind of plan ahead. If you start to think what's the next chord when it's time to change, you're never going to be as spot on and as fast as you are if you're already prepared for it, if you're already thinking about that chord ahead. So it's really a little mental approach to going through chord progressions. Think ahead, always think ahead. Imagine you're driving a really fast car, okay? You always want to look ahead to see what's coming and be ready for it. Think ahead. The other part of that tip is to leave early. If you're playing 4 beats on one chord and you have to get to another chord on beat 1 of the next bar, and you struggle a little bit in that transition between one chord and another, leave early. Leave on the 4.5 beat to get to that 1 beat on time. It's much more important to land on the new chord, or whatever beat you're landing on. It's much more important to land on that new chord in the exact right spot than it is to play the preceding chord right up to that point and do a really fast change. The changes will get faster as you play without you even really trying. But you've got to land on that chord when you're supposed to land on that chord, and that's what's going to make your song sound good. Finally, tip number 3 is a really great, useful technique that everybody should really know how to do, and it's palm muting. It's using the edge of your hand to just mute the strings. If you're not touching the strings, they ring out like that. If you use this part of your hand just to come over the edge of the saddle to the live part of the string, so on this part of the string, and start to mute that or muffle that string, that is so useful for so many applications. If you're struggling to do that without, palm muting, all your songs are kind of going to have this ringing, folky kind of sound. And I'm not denigrating folk music, but you want to be able to muffle that chord and control how long the notes go for and how hard you can strum them without overpowering the song. So that simple technique is a really, really good one to work on, and you can vary that. It's really not a given measurement. It's about listening to what it sounds like and finding that sweet spot. And the shape of your hand might mean that sweet spot is different for you than it is for me, but find where it is. And really you're concentrating on the lower strings rather than the higher strings, but once you get that technique down, you can muffle the high strings as well, and it sounds great. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I have this kind of wild theory that you can pretty much play any part of any song, whether it's a guitar part or not. If you palm mute the strings, you can make a guitar part sound like most other parts. Sort of. It's not a great theory, but it's mine. Use it in keyboard parts, in saxophone parts. You don't want it to sound like a guitar, you want it to sound like something else. Palm mute it and see how you go with it. That's it. They're my 3 tips. They're my 3 tips for taking your chord playing to the next level. Mute the lower strings any way you can. Think ahead and leave early. 2 for there. And use palm muting whenever you feel it's appropriate, whenever it sounds good. If it sounds good, it is good. Thanks for watching. See you here next time.